Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you joined us for our three-day Metals and Mining Conference. Our next live presentation is from Precipitate Gold. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slide, and you can also view their availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome our next presenter. He's Jeff Wilson, President and Chief Executive Officer of Precipitate Gold, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol PREIF and on the TSXV under the symbol PRG. Welcome back, Jeff.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks everybody for joining in and taking the time to join us here for an update on Precipitate Gold. I'm going to hop right into it here, and for the sake of time, we'll start out, of course, with the standard forward-looking statement. Of course, all investors are advised to read this carefully and seek investor or advisor advice before making any investments. Again, I'm going to sort of focus this presentation under the assumption that most people tuning in here have some history or understanding of the background of the company, and so I'll try to keep this as a bit of an update as much as an introduction. So a couple of key points that I think are corporate highlights here for the company, including the fact that we've got a little over $4 million Canadian in working capital. There are no warrants currently outstanding on the company. We haven't had to do a financing since 2021. We own all of our projects 100%, and all three of our projects in the Dominican Republic are drill ready. We've got a focus for 2025 on advancing multiple targets to a drill stage. Our primary flagship project at present is the Wanda Herrera project, which is adjacent to GoldQuest's Romero deposit, which is about 3.5 million ounces gold equivalent. Within that project, Wanda Herrera, we've got multiple zones where we've had some prior highlight drilling and trenching, as you can see here, some fairly compelling gold values in both of those. And the plan for 2025 is to continue our field work, groundwork, target delineation, and as I said earlier, advance towards the drill stage later this year. A quick sort of snapshot here of the capital structure. We've got 130 million shares issued and outstanding, 150 million fully diluted. As I said, no warrants outstanding on the company. There are some stock options, incentive stock options for management and directors. We've got a market cap of about, sort of 15 million, give or take, depending on the share price. As I said, our working capital, $4 million. And some of our largest shareholders include Barrick Gold Corporation and a company here in Vancouver called Strategic Metals. You can see the share price here. We've had a fairly nice run here at the end of last year and early part of this year. And I'll explain a little bit of what that's based on here as we move into the future slides. Management and directors, we've got a lean team here, but a very experienced and capable team. I, of course, am president and CEO. Alistair Waddell is one of the directors. He's a former founder and CEO of our neighbor GoldQuest. He has also been a senior exploration team member at Kinross and is now running a company called Inflection Resources focused in Australia. Lon Shaver is currently the president of Silver Corp Mining, which is about $1 billion market cap company, former investment banker at Raymond James, and someone I've worked with on a number of different projects over the years. My vice president of exploration is Michael Moore, and we've got an advisor in the form of Mexico Angelis Liscao, who is the former president of Barrick's Pueblo Viejo mining operation in the Dominican Republic. So this is a look at where we are located within the DR. You can see the three red dots are Precipitate's three projects. If you look at the smaller map here, this is just a reminder of just how close the Dominican Republic actually is to continental United States. You're looking at just about a 1,500 kilometer distance off the coast of Miami here to the Dominican Republic. It's a very mining friendly jurisdiction, one of the largest gold mining operations in the world. Barrick's Pueblo Viejo is situated here in the central part of the country, and mining is a significant part of this country's economy. Moving to the next slide here, I'll talk a little bit about this trend that we're situated within, but the main takeaway here is that this is a geological trend that runs through the Dominican Republic and into Haiti, and is the host to a number of multi-million ounce deposits. And it's the reason why we believe that our land package here at the south end of this trend is highly prospective for gold and other minerals. So I mentioned a little bit about why the share prices have started to move at the end of last year, and part of that has been an improving sentiment as it relates to the Dominican Republic. A number of factors have played into that. New government actions late last year suggest that the government is in fact in favor of moving projects from exploration into development. Our neighbors Gold Quest saw significant equity investment from Dominican investors to the tune of $8.7 million late last year, again, evidencing the in-country support for mining and exploration. Gold Quest, as our neighbors have reactivated their work programs on their project next door, and again, that's brought positive sentiment to the region. And as well, the Dominican government has established a state-owned agency dedicated to and overseeing mineral extraction for rare earths in country. And again, this is an indication that this country believes in mineral extraction as a significant part of the economy. And there's been an alignment with the United States in that regard, as the American government has pledged significant financial assistance in that endeavor. Again, this is a chart that shows Gold Quest share price. Again, it's after being fairly flat for a number of years, you've seen a real uptick here. And we think that that's an indication that the market is becoming increasingly confident and comfortable with the Dominican Republic as a mining jurisdiction. So this is a look at where we are situated with our Juan de Herrera project as it relates to Gold Quest's Romero. So this is Gold Quest in gray and Precipitate in yellow, our land package immediately adjacent to them, and we share a concession boundary for about 40 kilometers from north to south. The dots within the Gold Quest ground indicate their exploration targets. The stars at the north end indicate where their 3.5 million ounce gold equivalent deposit is located. But the dots on our project are the increasing number of target areas that we have been delineating within our project that we believe have the potential to host meaningful mineralization. And as our fieldwork has progressed in the last several months, we've seen the number of sort of prospective zones within our land package here increasing fairly significantly over the last sort of 12 months or so. This shows a number of samples that we took several years ago. We did an extensive field program of soil sampling. We collected over 17,000 individual soil samples from within the property package, from the very top to the very bottom. And it's an incredible density of samples. If each of these areas here is an individual dot that represents a sample. And so this was sort of one of the more meaningful programs to sort of give us a better indication of, what the potential of this project may be as we move this forward. And from this work, we saw that a number of new targets, many of which have been announced since August of last year, have been delineated. And we've outlined now up to 10 new priority zones that have shown significant elevated gold values, and in some cases copper values, that we believe warrant follow-up work and have the potential to justify additional ongoing exploration and hopefully eventually drilling on one or more of these target areas. And you can see that we've identified this through quite extensive soil sampling, and out of that, multiple zones have emerged. One of those priority zones that's emerged in the last several months is something we call the CN zone. And at the CN zone, we had an incredibly elevated gold sample. You can see on the screen here where we got an individual sample that ran 73.8 grams per ton gold. This is the highest grade gold sample returned anywhere within this region, whether that's on our ground or our neighbor's ground. Also within the zone, we identified a sample that ran 34.9 grams per ton gold, another that was 11.7, and another that was 8.7. These are incredibly high gold values from this new zone, and this is a zone that we only delineated and identified in the last 8 months or so. So it's new, it's emerging, and part of the work that we did on a follow-up to this was to go back in and do some trenching in this area. And so the slide you're looking at now shows the trenching that we did within the CN zone. And essentially what that's doing is that's digging a trench over several meters to see if that gold valuation is consistent and not just an individual anomalous sample. And so what we saw here from a number of trenches, in fact, we did 12 trenches, but some of these, again, delineated some very high grade intervals over reasonable widths. And one of the highlights I'll point out here is, you've got trench 9 that's 7.9 grams gold over 2 meters. You've got trench 5, 83.6 grams per ton gold and almost 30 grams per ton silver over a meter. And trench 3, 32 grams per ton gold, 286 grams per ton silver over 5 meters interval. This is significant mineralization over meaningful widths and gives us some indication that this is an area that looks to be highly prospective for additional follow-up work and perhaps an eventual drill program. This is also open. If you look at the inset map here, the stars indicate the specific trenches, and you can see here to the bottom, we've identified where the mineralization sort of offsets a little bit, and we want to go back and do follow-up to the southeast to see if we can continue to trace that mineralization further to the south. In the south portion of the project, which if you look at the little inset map on the project up here, you can see that we've got several areas in the south that indicate stronger base metal and specifically copper mineralization here. And this is an area both at the southeast zone as well as the central zone where we've identified some really compelling copper values. At the southeast zone, we've got an individual grab sample, rock sample that ran 13% copper. And within the central zone, with some trenching that we did on the back of some sampling, we identified 4.4% copper over 1.8 meters in a broader interval of 1.6% copper over nearly a little more than 5 meters. So again, consistent, reasonable widths in elevated grades in base metals, as well as some gold down here. But this is definitely more of a copper-rich part of the project, which again, in today's current commodity environment, we believe copper is a significant component of this project and can play into the economics going forward. Quickly here, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but geophysics is a very significant part of our exploration programs in the Dominican Republic. Geophysics was responsible for the discoveries of the Romero deposit to our neighbors, as well as projects to the north in this same belt of rocks. And so geophysics is really a key component that needs to be reviewed in coincidental with the geochemistry or the gold valuations that we see. And so this is a map that shows some of the strong anomalies from a magnetic standpoint throughout this region, not just on our property, but as well as on GoldQuest. And it gives you an indication, where do we see the kinds of magnetic signatures that also tie in with mineralization. And so those, of course, if we can see some elevated geophysical anomalies in areas where we haven't done some work, these are areas where we want to go back and do follow-up. We have done some geophysics, some IP chargeability as a more sort of specific vectoring tool for geophysical surveying over multiple zones within our project, including the JT, the Ginger Ridge East, as well as Southeast Central Peak Metro. You can see here, that there are geophysical anomalies. Basically what you're looking at here is where you see those pink colors is typically where you're seeing the increased chargeability readings. And that often is the kind of area where you want to look at with more detail for geochemistry as well as potential drilling. So what have we been doing over the last little while here to try to evidence, where we might see some of our best stuff and how we want to follow up on some of these gold grades in soils and trenching and try to turn that into bona fide drill targets? Well, part of that is IP geophysics, and IP is induced polarization. Essentially, you're putting a charge into the ground. You read the response of that charge from devices on the ground, and it gives you an indication of where there may be more chargeable elements within the ground. Of course, that often is associated with mineral deposits. So we've just announced in the last month or so that we are going to be extending our geophysical or IP geophysical surveying within this sort of region of the property, which is located as I show here on this box, just kind of here in the sort of south central part of the property. And we've outlined here the lines where we will be running grid lines of geophysics. And you can see here that we will be doing about 35 kilometers of IP geophysics over multiple zones of the project. This will include some geophysical lines that will be infill lines. So where we've done lines at 200-meter spacings in the past, we'll tighten that up with 100-meter spacings to give ourselves better density of data. But in other cases, we're going to extend the area or the coverage area of the geophysics so that we get more geophysical information, either off to the east or to the south or to the north of where we've already surveyed, trying to give ourselves a better, cast a broader net as it relates to geophysical information that could be very useful for us in identifying where and how we may want to drill this project going forward. This is a slide that is a little bit difficult, I'm sure, to decipher and read all the information at this scale. But essentially, this is a map that you'll see on our online presentation on our website as well. And what this looks to sort of outline is the proliferation here of high-grade mineralization, both in gold and in copper, throughout this region. So this is samples taken from both Gold Quest ground as well as precipitates. And there is just a staggering number of heavily elevated values throughout this project. There are copper values up to 17% copper, gold values in the double digits up to 67 and 73 grams per ton gold. And yet much of this project area, both on Gold Quest ground and ours, is relatively underexplored. These are still relatively early stage projects where, yes, there's been some drilling, but there's still a lot of opportunity to do additional drilling and make new discoveries throughout this district. So although at present there's a 3.5 million ounce gold equivalent resource at Gold Quest Romero next door to us, we really believe that there are multiple areas throughout this region where additional ounces of gold could be identified and pounds of copper could be identified through ongoing exploration and target delineation. And that's really the reason why we're here. Highly mineralized, underexplored region in a jurisdiction where mining is appreciated, understood, and being supported by the government as a mechanism for economic benefit for the country. This is the kind of place where we think early stage exploration companies like Precipitate want to be. As a quick snapshot of what else we have, clearly Wanda Herrera is our primary focus, but we do have two other projects in the country over sort of in the sort of central part of the country. Wanda Herrera is over here, of course, but in the central part of the country, we've got two projects. One called Pueblo Grande, which again is 100% owned and fully permitted for drilling, and another project called Ponton, which is about 23 to 30 kilometers to the east. And Ponton also owned 100% by the company and permitted for drilling. These two properties are prospective. As I'll mention in the next slide here, the Pueblo Grande project was recently under an earn-in agreement with Barrick, whereby Barrick had the right to earn a 70% interest in this property by spending $30 million over 10 years. As you can see from the map image here, Barrick's Pueblo Grande project is in the central portion of this in sort of the white portion outlined in black. And that is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the largest gold mines in the world and in the top 5 in Latin America. And this is the single largest contributor to the Dominican Republic's economy. It's a monster. And we were able to secure for just $25,000 cash and some shares of Precipitate this land package that essentially surrounds on 3 sides Barrick's Pueblo Viejo. We spent a little bit of our own money in 2018 and 2019 after the acquisition, and then Barrick stepped in and entered into an earn-in agreement where they spent $7 million on this project. In recent months, they've given the project back to us 100%. They didn't find anything that was sizable enough for Barrick's thresholds, but we still think this is a very strategically located land package, and there are multiple targets here that we still think have merit and could be the focus of additional follow-up exploration work by us going forward. Part of the process in doing this deal, we did in fact acquire royalties on some of Barrick's Pueblo Viejo concessions. And so we do have a couple of 3% NSRs on some small portions of their property package that it now makes up part of the Pueblo Viejo mining operation. So again, we think a strategic point of leverage for us. And again, this is a project that we picked up for a song, saw $7 million worth of work out of Barrick's pocket, not out of ours, and allowed us to see this project advance significantly. Now we've got it back 100%. We'll be reassessing the data from all the work done by Barrick in the last 5 years and looking to see whether or not there's some underexplored or yet to be explored areas that warrant follow-up by ourselves. So in summary, Dominican Republic assets provide strategic optionality. We've got our Juan Herrera project, again, owned 100%, strategically located next to what we believe is going to be the Dominican Republic's next mining operation, and that's Gold Quest Romero project. We've got a number of new anomalies that have been delineated from 2024 to 2025, and we continue to see more anomalies. In fact, we announced one in a news release this morning, yet another brand new sizable gold anomaly. And this is an area where we're looking to advance these targets and then prioritize these areas to determine which is the most prospective for drilling, where do we see our best shot, and go in and do some drilling, we hope, later this year. I should point out, we own our own drill rig in tandem with Gold Quest. And so drill costs for us in the Dominican Republic are quite inexpensive. We can get a lot done on a small amount of money, and certainly hope to activate our own drills in the months ahead. We've got the Ponton project owned 100%. There are a number of targets there that justify follow-up drilling, and we hope to be able to be in a position to go back there in the future, as well as Pueblo Grande, where we've seen significant amount of exploration work done by our partner Barrick, our partner at the time Barrick, and we'll be reevaluating that as we go forward. So both of those projects are owned 100%. They have drill permits in place, but at present we really want to maintain our focus on Juan Herrera. We think that is our primary asset. We think it's the best opportunity for us to make a significant discovery. And given the change in sentiment and the renewed optimism and positivity that we're seeing in that region of San Juan where Romero is located, we think that positive results from our Juan Herrera project can start to get market attention and create value for the company and for our shareholders. All right, well, that's it. I've got a little bit of time here for questions and answers, and I see that there are some questions here from some people, and I'll just go through them sort of one at a time here in the sequence in which they were posted. First question, how did SMD acquire their position? So Strategic Metals is one of our largest shareholders, and they acquired their shares of Precipitate initially through vending in a project when Precipitate first listed a project in northern British Columbia. But subsequently, as we started to progress with our Juan Herrera project, we saw Strategic take a significant interest in some of the geophysical targeting that we had done, and then came in on a $800,000 financing, where they wrote a check for $800,000 on an equity financing. And subsequently, the warrants associated with that financing were in the money. And so they wrote a check for another $1.2 million to exercise all of their warrants. And so at that point, they acquired up to 20 million shares total, and have been a very supportive and happy shareholder ever since. So that's how they acquired their position, and they've maintained it and been very loyal and strong shareholders ever since. The second question is sort of similar. What's the relationship with Barrick and Strategic? So Barrick acquired I mentioned the Strategic position. Barrick acquired their position through, again, an equity financing. At the time, we did the earn-in agreement, where they entered into the agreement to earn a 70% interest in our Pueblo Grande. We negotiated with them that we didn't want them to just have an interest in the project. We wanted them to have a little bit of skin in the game as it related to Precipitate, so that we were all sort of aligned in terms of investor interest. And so they came in and acquired a little over 13 million shares, and that was for about $1.3 million Canadian in an equity financing. There were no warrants associated with that financing, so it was a straight share, not a unit. And they've been sitting on that stock ever since. They've never sold a share. And in fact, in one of our recent amendments to the earn-in agreement, going back about 5 or 6 months ago, we were able to get Barrick to agree to a 12-month lockup to that stock. So they are restricted from selling those shares for about another 8 months or so, something like that. Next question. Any plans to continue work at Pueblo Viejo in 2025? Well, I think I touched on that a little bit in the presentation. And yeah, I mean, I think the jury's still out on that a little bit. We want to, attain all of the information, including drill core and everything that we can from Barrick. We've been brought along all the way along with respect to summary reports and updates from them. So it's not as if we don't have the data or we're in the dark about what Barrick has done. But, obviously actually taking possession of all of the hard data is a bit of a transition and takes a bit of time. And so we're in the process of that now. On top of that, my Vice President of Exploration, Michael Moore, has been in the field at Juan Herrera for the last several weeks. And so we're going to need a little bit of time to go through the Barrick data, but the view there would be that we reassess that, we reevaluate that, and we see whether or not there are some opportunities that maybe went underappreciated or unrecognized by Barrick that might be an opportunity for us to go back in and do some work of our own. Of course, that will be reliant upon the results of our evaluation. Next question: what are your milestones to end of year and any funding needs to support? I think that the objective at the present time here, we've seen some real positivity as it relates to our neighbor Gold Quest, some real positivity as it relates to investors from the Dominican Republic getting behind mining in the Dominican Republic, and we're seeing that reflected in some of the investor sentiment in our share prices. And so with that increased confidence, we can see that there is a potential return on investment from, expenditures turning into results, returning into, market reward. So we are increasing our work programs. We've done an extensive amount of field work over the last 12 months or so, and you can see that in our news flow over the last 12 months. But where the rubber really hits the road, of course, is drilling. And so for us, the next big step is to really vector and target these new anomalies that we're identifying and start to really layer on information, which includes the geophysics I mentioned, et cetera, to try to prioritize and say, where's our best shot here? Where do we want to drill? And see whether that's 1, 2, 3 different target areas, and then lay out a drill program or a drill plan that I would like to be in a position to execute on later this year. Now, there's a lot of variables here in terms of how that work progresses, in terms of timing. And one of the other key components here is the fact that, we are waiting for, as people who follow will know, this important terms of reference that would come from the Dominican government to our neighbor Gold Quest. And I think a lot of us believe that that's a real indicator of the path forward here for mining in the Dominican Republic. And so until such time as we see that terms of reference delivered to Gold Quest, indicating that they have the ability to move that project forward through development and into production, we're going to be a little bit cautious about deploying capital. But with that coming, if it does come in the coming let's say months, that of course would be a strong indicator for us to really ramp up our activity and really look to get the drills turning and get aggressive. So that's kind of our plans. In terms of funding, we're fairly well set. We've got over $4 million in the bank. And should the share price get to a point where we thought it was prudent, or was there interest from the right kinds of groups that wanted to come in and support the company with some sort of funding, certainly we would consider it. But at the present time, we're certainly not backed into a corner on that. And we've got the capacity to be patient and make sure that any financing we do down the road is on terms that we're comfortable with. So on that note, I don't know if there's any further questions. I've got about another 40 seconds or so here before I time out. I'd just like to say, as I said, we're really optimistic here now about the outlook for our projects, our company, the way we've sort of been patient and played out this process that's been a long drawn out one as it relates to the Dominican Republic over the last several years. But we feel as if we're at a better point here now, and with our ducks in a row, really feel as if the balance of 2025 and beyond can be a really compelling time for the company and its shareholders. So I'd be happy to do any one-on-ones, happy to take emails from anybody that's interested. And thanks for your time.